My first guest, a modern Renaissance man, a world-class mountaineer, an accomplished filmmaker, a teacher, storyteller with a mission to chronicle the status of the Himalayan glaciers and to help us all understand what's happening in this time of climate change. And please welcome the founder and executive director of the nonprofit Glacier Works, David Breashears. David, thanks for being here.
How are you?
Cool
Happy
to
to
see
be
you.
here.
I feel like we should have given you a better introduction, like you should have rappelled in or something.
That would be appropriate.
I've got carabiners.
We should hard to do through this roof here.
We're just happy you're here. We got to talk about your evolution because, again, it's mountaineer. A lot of people go, hey, that Breashears, that's the mountain climber guy. That's the filmmaker guy.
IMAX and
But
all
it's
that
gone
stuff.
a lot further now. You're doing all sorts of climate change. You're teaching. Talk about how all of this has evolved for you.
Well, it started out, I guess, when a 10-year-old boy saw a picture of Tenzing on the top of Mount Everest. That was a picture taken in May of 1953 by Sir Edmund Hillary and set my mind dreaming about what it would be like to be a mountaineer and stand on top of that peak. So I became a rock climber, an ice climber, an alpinist, and when I was 23 years old, I managed to get on my first filmmaking team to Everest for ABC Sports, and that was 1979. And over the years, I've been on 45 expeditions to the Greater Himalayan region. I've led many of those. I've been on Everest 13 times. I've climbed it 5 times. We made the first microwave transmission from the summit, live broadcast in 1983. Had a really hard time getting a 42-pound IMAX camera to the top in 1996. And one year in 2004, actually 2007, I was asked to go take photos of the glaciers. And what I saw astonished me in how fast these glaciers had been melting. And ever since then, now it's been 5 years, we've had 11 expeditions to the world's highest peaks, trying to figure out what's going on over there as climate change related to what's happening to these glaciers.
Well, I know it's your reality. You've been there in person, but what is it like for your job is to, hey, we want you to go to a glacier on the side of the world's tallest mountain, document it, take some photos. What is that like?
It's worth remembering that for almost 33 years, my office, my workplace has been between 20,000 feet and 29,000 feet.
Right.
So we're quite comfortable. In fact, we're more comfortable when it's minus 30 in a 60-mile-an-hour wind at 25,000 feet than I would be if you asked me to do something here in Redmond.
Yeah, you have a hard time breathing down here?
Well, I just don't really know where I am. I've been to the top of Mount Everest probably more times than I've been to Times Square.
Some beautiful footage.
yeah.
You've documented some unbelievable things as we're seeing.
But it's hard work, and it takes conviction. It takes knowing what your goals are. It takes having great team members, and we do have, and we know the terrain. We know the place, and we know how to operate and execute there. But mostly it's good work. It's rewarding work, and the imagery we're starting to come back with, and some of it, eventually I hope to show you here, it's quite spectacular. And we're turning it into innovative, interactive STEM education program.
Yeah, you've taken this farther than just photos. You've got some new tech at work. We're going to look at that in just a second. It's unbelievable what you were previewing for me. But talk about Glacier Works. This is sort of the evolution of all the things you've been doing.
So I was fortunate to have gained this skill set, and to be a level of competence in getting imagery in the highest terrain on Earth. And when I was sent over to get this photograph of a match photograph of a glacier, which is here's what it looked like in 1921 or 1899. We stand there. Here's what it looks like in 2007.
That's the power of the before and after, right?
It's irrefutable, authentic evidence. I was sent there for Frontline, the PBS series, to get this image. And when I got that image from where George Mallory, because it's there, George Mallory, who died on Everest in June of 1924, it was his image taken in 1921. When I saw this, the devastation to the glacier and how much it had changed in such a short period of time, I thought, man, Breashears, why didn't you know more about this? This has been happening under your feet. You know, you've been walking across this landscape for 30-something years. And it caused me and compelled me to want to know more. And we have now learned a lot more with 11 more expeditions, and we've changed the way we obtain our imagery, we changed the way we use it. But fundamentally, I could take this skill set, which led to a lot of films, and to me, films that didn't amount to a hill of beans.
Right.
You know, they come and go to a project that can have a really big web presence. And
You
we're
had
building,
that eureka moment of this is what I should be showing
and
people.
also, where should I be using these skills? How should I be spending my time? You know, and to me, this has been a really wonderful and rewarding way to spend time. And it's really hard, I'll tell you. Climate change these days is so polarized, and it's such a polemical issue that getting people's attention is hard, and really on a really fundamental level, getting money for climate change, anything to deal with climate change has been really difficult. That's far and away the biggest challenge for our teams.
And as you say, you know, it gets slightly political when you talk about who's at fault and what are we doing wrong and how can we stop this, but you've got a pretty powerful way of expressing the message of the before and after. Here it was, and here it is. Hard to dispute.
And also, we don't provide answers. We pose questions. We don't have a stance. We don't have a position. If we do have a position, it's yes, change is on the way. What does it mean? How do we better understand it? How do we get people's attention, young, bright people, and get them educated so they'll want to understand the likely scenarios? And if these scenarios or outcomes are negative, then how do we prepare for them, or how do we mitigate them? But the blame game, the sky is falling game, that's not what we do. We sit in the rational middle. We want to bring the very, very best evidence, the very best science to this place, and let people make their own decisions. Because when people are allowed to look at good information and make their own decisions, then you know they kind of become owners of that decision they've made, and they become more critical thinkers about problems.
You've got some really eye-popping, you said the very best evidence, the very best technology at work.
Yeah.
You've brought us more than just photos here, some really unbelievable images, live action of what you were experiencing, the Himalayan glaciers, how it's evolving, and you basically, as you said, held the world's highest photo exhibit, right?
That's right. That's right. Now, one thing that I can't show you, I'm having a little glitch in my computer, is the imagery of the before and after wipes.
Right.
So let's just assume that a lot of what we do involves before and after imagery, and I'm going to talk much more about that at the keynote. But what I want to show you here is just some of our interactive imagery, if you'd like to see it.
Absolutely,
So-
yeah, we're seeing it now.
So this is pretty simple stuff here. Now, to get an image with 3 or 4 billion pixels is not that hard. You know, you just use a robotic head, or you shoot this stuff manually, and then you stitch it together. So what we're seeing here is Everest, 29,028 feet high.
Wow.
Lhotse's, believe it or not, that's the fourth highest mountain in the world. And although Nuptse's much shorter than these other peaks, it's in the foreground, so it's taller. But with this tool and educators that we're working with, it's getting really, really hard to get the attention of children these days. There's many, many interactive commercial devices and games and other things that that they find much more compelling. And so at GlacierWorks, we want to get their attention. We could zoom in here, for instance, and this has nothing to do with the glaciers, but that's the last village you would visit before you, village, like yak herders pasture now with a few buildings in it. It's 17,000 feet.
This is unbelievable.
Now, if we zoom over here,
I know you're sort of used to what we're seeing here, but this is pretty unbelievable that
Well,
you can really go right into base camp there.
yeah, well, I first camped here, I don't know, I was 25 years old or 26 years old in 1983, when I should point out I had the privilege of being the 135th person to climb Everest. And here I'll just show you with some of our imagery, not necessarily related to GlacierWorks, but here's why if I went there with you next year, you would be the 6,000th person. Our entire camp
I'm
in
okay with going there
1983
this way.
Yeah,
I'm
our
kind of a
entire
wimp.
camp would have been about this big.
Wow.
But let me just show you what Everest, just for the heck of it, since people are fascinated with
this is what
base
it's
camp.
become.
This is Everest Base Camp in May 2012.
Wow.
Now, I have to tell you, teachers love this stuff because we're not just talking about glaciers, we're talking about people sitting on glaciers.
Yeah.
And then they can take off from here, as they do, on stories of either glaciology, geology, or high-altitude physiology. But just look at the density
It's
of the
sprawling
tents
now.
here.
It's no longer a little camp. It's kind of all over. I mean, this looks like some sort of a sci-fi movie.
And it ends way up here. And it's such...
Wow.
Actually, our camp in 1983 was right up here. So our entire camp, we had this whole mountain to ourselves. What a wonderful experience in 1983. But say we want to make it a little bit more interactive, and we're working really hard with the team here at Microsoft Research on something called RIN, which is a rich interactive narrative. Now, we're still in the process of working out how we're going to use that technology for storytelling. So this, what you're seeing is not RIN-based, but you can see how we want to be able to move people around and get them down on the ground. And my son, he's only 10 years old, and you know, it's hard to get his attention sometimes. But when I sit down and want to tell stories with this, just as a parent, then I can say to my son, let's go inside of this tent here. This is 17,600 feet. We're sitting on ice. Why not place some photographs of the ice that we're talking about here at base camp? So here was the inside of our tent. Now, RIN will have many different menus here. They're not built into this yet, but anyone with an imagination can say, well, choose your theme, choose your story. Or we could say, let's go look at a glacier on the other side of Everest. But this is essentially comparative photography.
Now you've got your own exhibit.
Yeah.
You've got enough people on the ground up there.
Yeah. Now see, we can see the before and after, right? It's pretty clear. But I want to show you over here a glacier 20 miles away, its behavior to climate change, its response to climate change. This is at the base of the world's highest mountain. So look at the difference. There's the glacier in 1921.
Right.
That's all a glacier under that debris. That's a debris-covered glacier.
Okay.
I'm not a scientist, but of course I need to know all these things. But the other thing is, why not, if we have 1 billion pixels in every image, why don't we just interact with the image? Let's go exploring here. Let's go have a real look, if I can coordinate my myself here.